Expanded in natural storytelling format, no headings used. It was a cool Monday morning. The kind of morning where the city feels like it's just beginning to stretch. With coffee cups in hand and car engines humming on every street. A sleek black car pulled up quietly in front of a glass building, the headquarters of a well-known tech consulting company. From the back seat stepped a woman in a dark blue blazer, simple heels and a confident but calm expression. She held no fancy briefcase, wore no expensive jewelry, and had no assistant trailing behind her. Just her phone in one hand, a small purse over her shoulder, and a quiet kind of presence that made people glance twice, though not always for the right reasons. This was her first day stepping into the building as the new CEO. Not an intern, not a visitor, not a guest speaker. The CEO. But the moment she walked into the lobby, something felt off. The front desk attendant looked up briefly, barely making eye contact. She smiled politely and said, "Hi there, deliveries go around the side entrance." There was no question. "No, can I help you?" "No, who are you here to see?" Just a soft but clear instruction. "Wait outside." For a second, she didn't say anything. Not because she was shocked, but because she had seen this kind of thing before. Too many times. Still, it was surprising because this wasn't just any business. This was her business now. Before she could reply, two men in suits walked past her and were greeted with warm nods by the receptionist. One of them even glanced at her briefly, then looked away like she didn't matter. They walked right into the elevator, laughing about something. No one stopped them. She took a deep breath, nodded to herself, and simply said, "All right." Then she turned and stepped back outside. Not angrily, not dramatically, just with the kind of calm that only comes from knowing something other people don't. Once she was outside, she pulled out her phone and made a short call. It was quick and quiet. She said, "I'll need the boardroom in 10. Make sure everyone's there." The person on the other end responded with a respectful "Yes, ma'am," and that was it. She stood by the entrance for another minute, watching the building. She wasn't in a rush. She was thinking. Thinking about how far she had come to get to this point, and how strange it was that even now, people still looked right through her. A few moments later, a younger employee came out from the side door, holding a cup of coffee and glancing at his phone. When he saw her, he paused, looked up again, and his eyes widened slightly. "Ma'am, wait, are you?" he started. She smiled and gave a small nod. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," he said quickly, stepping aside and holding the door open for her. "They didn't tell us you were coming in this morning." "It's all right," she said gently. "Happens all the time." As they walked in, the receptionist looked up again and suddenly froze. Her face went pale as realization hit, but it was too late. The moment had already passed. The young employee offered to escort her to the boardroom, but she thanked him and told him she'd find her own way. She had been through the office once before, during a brief tour after her appointment. She remembered every hallway, every face, every sideways glance. As she walked past the rows of cubicles and glass offices, a few heads turned. Some people recognized her from the email announcement a few weeks back. Others stared, wondering who she was. It still hadn't sunk in for most of them. She reached the boardroom and gently pushed open the door. Inside were 8 members of the executive team, sitting comfortably around a long, polished table. Most of them were in the middle of chatting, sipping their morning coffees, relaxed. The same 2 men who had walked past her in the lobby were there too. One of them turned toward the door, expecting maybe an assistant or someone bringing in refreshments. When he saw her, he blinked in surprise. "Can I help you?" he asked. She paused at the doorway, looked around the room slowly, and then stepped inside. "No," she said, "but I can help you." And just like that, the room fell completely silent. Someone at the end of the table coughed awkwardly. Another person began flipping through his agenda, avoiding eye contact. Finally, someone spoke up. "Wait, you're—" She gave a small smile. "Yes, I'm the new CEO." No one knew what to say. The air in the room suddenly felt heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. For 5 long seconds, nobody moved. Then the man who had spoken earlier stood up quickly, trying to recover. "Oh, of course, welcome. Sorry, we didn't recognize you right away." She raised a hand, not angrily, just firmly. "It's okay. Let's not pretend. You saw me in the lobby. You walked right past me. You didn't ask who I was." A few people shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. I've had worse, she continued, but I want you to think about what it means that someone like me, walking into this building on her first day, is assumed to be anything but the one in charge. She wasn't yelling. She didn't have to. Her voice was even, but every word hit like a pin dropping in a quiet room. I came here early today for a reason, she added. To see this company the way it really runs. Not from a report. Not from a chart. But from the ground floor. And in 5 minutes I saw everything I needed to. No one knew what she meant by that, not yet. But they would soon. And that was just the beginning. It wasn't just any ordinary appointment that brought her to this company. Behind the scenes, a lot had been happening for months before she even stepped through those doors. The story of how she became the new CEO was one full of challenges, struggles, and quiet battles that most people didn't see. She had worked for years in leadership roles at different companies. Each time she had taken a struggling business and turned it around. Not with loud speeches or flashy moves, but by listening carefully, understanding what was really wrong and making tough decisions. Her reputation was built on steady, clear thinking and the ability to inspire change. When the board of directors at this company first started looking for a new leader, they wanted someone who could fix things fast. The company had been losing clients, profits were dropping, and the employees felt stuck in the past. It wasn't just about numbers. The company culture was old-fashioned. People didn't trust each other, and diversity was almost non-existent. The leadership team was almost entirely made up of men who had been there for decades. They made decisions without asking the rest of the staff, and many people felt invisible. For a long time, the company had ignored the growing calls for change. Some board members thought they could keep things as they were, and hoped the problems would disappear. But the truth was clear. The company was losing its place in the market, and its reputation was suffering. That's when the board began looking outside. They wanted fresh ideas and new leadership. But even then there was resistance. Some wanted to promote from within. They believed loyalty meant everything, and they were hesitant about bringing in someone from the outside, especially someone who didn't fit their usual image of a CEO. The old guard wasn't ready for change. Then came the decision that surprised many. They chose her, a black woman with years of experience but no ties to their world. It was a bold move, one that made headlines in the business world. The company said it was committed to diversity and new leadership, but deep down, many people inside the company didn't know what to think. When the announcement was made, the reactions were mixed. Some employees felt hopeful. They wanted to believe that things could finally get better. Others were skeptical, unsure if this new leader really understood the company's problems. Some quietly questioned if she would be accepted by the people who actually ran the day-to-day operations. She knew this from the start. She understood that her appointment wasn't just about fixing a company. It was about breaking through long-held attitudes and old habits. She knew there would be people who doubted her, who didn't respect her, and who might even try to push her out. But she also knew her worth and what she could bring to the table. When she arrived on her first day, she was prepared. Not just with plans and reports, but with patience and resolve. The incident in the lobby, being told to wait outside, was just the first sign of the kind of resistance she would face. It was a small moment, but it showed exactly how deep some of the problems ran. It wasn't just about business strategy or numbers. It was about respect, recognition, and who gets to hold power. Her job was bigger than she had imagined. It wasn't just about leading a company. It was about changing the culture. And changing culture is never easy. Her first weeks were filled with meetings, interviews, and late nights studying every detail of the business. She talked to employees at all levels, from interns to longtime managers. She listened more than she spoke because she wanted to understand the real issues, not just what people said in official meetings, but what they whispered in the halls. What she learned was sobering. Many people were frustrated and tired. They felt ignored and unvalued. Some didn't believe change was possible. Others were worried about losing their jobs. The company's problems were not just about leadership. They were about trust. And trust takes time to rebuild. The executives she met were often defensive or dismissive. Some tried to convince her that everything was fine. Others made excuses for the company's failures. It became clear that there was a deep divide between the board's vision and the everyday reality inside the company. She realized she couldn't just come in and tell people what to do. She needed to build respect and earn trust. But at the same time, she knew she couldn't wait too long. The company was bleeding money and the clock was ticking. Behind the scenes, she worked closely with the board, who had given her full authority to make changes. But even with their support, she faced constant challenges. Some board members still hoped she would fail or leave quickly. They worried about what her leadership might mean for their own positions and influence. She also started thinking about the people she would need to bring in to help turn the company around. She knew she couldn't do it alone. She needed a team that shared her vision for a more open, fair, and successful company. People who believed in merit, not just tradition. People who could inspire others and help rebuild a broken culture. But finding those people wasn't easy. The pool of existing leaders was small and many were tied to the old ways. It meant looking outside the company and sometimes outside the industry. It meant taking risks and making tough calls. All of this weighed on her mind as she walked into the building that first day, only to be asked to wait outside. It was a reminder that no matter how far she had come, the battle for respect and authority was still real. It was a moment that many might have taken personally or let shake their confidence, but she didn't. Instead, she used it to fuel her determination. She reminded herself that she wasn't just there to hold a title. She was there to change things for the better, for the company, for its employees, and for everyone who had been overlooked before. She knew the road ahead would be tough. There would be resistance and setbacks. But she was ready, more ready than anyone could imagine. And so, with quiet strength and a clear purpose, she stepped back inside that building, ready to face the executives who had ignored her just minutes before, ready to show them that leadership is not about who you think you are, but what you do. What happened next would change the company forever. The atmosphere inside the boardroom was tense. The executives sat around a long, polished table, many of them surprised to see the new CEO standing quietly at the door. Some shifted in their chairs. Others exchanged quick, uncertain glances. No one was quite sure what to say or do next. She stood still for a moment, taking in the room. The faces of the management team told stories all on their own. Some looked defensive, others uncertain, and a few even a little afraid. They had all been part of this company for years, some for decades. They thought they knew how things worked, who was in charge, and what the future held. But this moment shook all of that. She wasn't angry, but her calm presence was powerful. It was clear she wasn't there to make small talk or be polite. She was there to lead, to change things. The man who had spoken first finally found his voice again. "Can we help you with something?" he asked, trying to keep his tone casual, but it came out a little nervous. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked around the room, making eye contact with several people, making sure everyone was paying attention. "No," she said firmly, "but I can help you." The room fell quiet again. She took a step inside, closing the door gently behind her. Then she began to speak, not in a loud voice, but one that was clear and steady. "I came here this morning not just as the CEO, but as someone who cares deeply about this company," she said. "I wanted to see for myself how things really work around here." She paused. "And what I saw, what happened in the lobby, is a perfect example of what's wrong." There were murmurs. Some looked down at their notes. Others avoided looking at her directly. She continued. "When I walked in, I was told to wait outside. Told to wait like I was a visitor, a delivery, or someone unimportant." That moment said more than any report ever could. Her words were soft but heavy. You could feel the weight in the room. She wasn't just talking about respect for her personally. She was talking about respect for the entire company, its people, and its future. For too long, this company has been led by the same people, the same ideas, and the same attitudes. It's no wonder the company is struggling. It's no wonder employees don't feel valued. It's no wonder clients are looking elsewhere. She looked directly at the executives. It's time for change, not just small changes. Not just talking about diversity or new policies. Real change. She took a deep breath, then said something that stopped everyone in their tracks. "I am here to make that change, and I am here to do it now." The room was silent. One of the executives finally spoke, his voice a little shaky. "Are you saying you want to fire us?" She shook her head slowly. "Not just you. But yes, there will be changes. Changes that some of you won't like. Changes that will challenge the way things have been done." She moved closer to the table, her hands resting lightly on the polished wood. "I have reviewed your performance, your leadership, and the company's results, and I have to be honest. Many of you have not done the job this company needs. Not because you're bad people, but because the system here has failed. Because too much power was given without accountability. Because the culture didn't encourage growth or respect. Heads nodded slightly. Some executives swallowed hard. I want to give you a choice, she said. You can either be part of the old way or you can join me in building something new. She looked around again, her eyes sharp but kind. This company has great potential, but it needs new leadership that understands the future. Leadership that values every employee and every client equally. For a moment, no one spoke. The room was heavy with uncertainty. Then she made the decision that would change everything. I am dismissing the current management team, she said simply. The words hung in the air, a few gasps. Some people looked shocked. Others looked down, already knowing what this meant. She continued. I will work with the board to bring in new leaders. People who share the vision of respect, diversity, and performance. People who are ready to listen, learn, and grow. She didn't wait for approval. This was her moment to lead. Some executives stood up, clearly upset. Others sat quietly, accepting the news. She met their eyes one last time. This is not personal, she said. It's about the company's future. It's about doing what's right. With that, she turned and walked out of the room. The door closed behind her, leaving the executives to process what had just happened. Outside, she took a moment to breathe. She knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be resistance, criticism, and doubt. But she was ready. She was ready because this wasn't just about a job title. It was about responsibility, about leadership, about respect, and most of all, it was about creating a company where no one would ever be told to wait outside again. After the decision was made and the management team dismissed, the building felt different. The usual buzz of chatter and quiet confidence was replaced by a heavy silence. People walked a little slower, talked a little softer. It was clear something big had just happened. Everyone felt it, even those who weren't in the meeting. She didn't rush to celebrate or announce the changes loudly. Instead, she took a moment to think about what needed to come next. This wasn't just about firing people. It was about rebuilding. It was about setting a new course, one that would be harder than anyone imagined but necessary for the company's survival. Her first move was to gather the remaining staff and leadership. Not just the executives, but employees from all departments and all levels. She wanted to hear from them. She wanted to understand their hopes, fears, and ideas. She believed that real change begins by listening. In a large conference room, she stood before a crowd that was a mix of nervous and hopeful. She started by sharing her story, not the polished version, but the honest one. How she had faced challenges in her own career, how she had been underestimated many times, and how she had learned that respect is earned by actions, not titles. She spoke about the company's problems, not to blame, but to be clear and honest. She told them about the old culture, the lack of trust, and the missed opportunities. But then she shifted to what was possible, how the company could become stronger, more inclusive, and more successful. The employees listened. Some nodded slowly. Others wiped away tears. They felt seen and heard for the first time in a long while. She then opened the floor for questions and ideas. For hours, people shared their thoughts, some critical, some hopeful, but all important. She took notes, promised to act on what she heard, and assured them that their voices mattered. At the same time, she began the difficult process of finding new leaders. She looked beyond the company's usual circles, reaching out to people with fresh ideas and diverse backgrounds. She wanted people who could bring not only skills but also values, people who believed in teamwork, respect, and fairness. Each new hire was chosen carefully. She interviewed them herself, sometimes multiple times. She wanted to be sure they were ready to face the challenge of changing a company's culture, one that had been resistant to change for years. As the new leaders started to come on board, she worked hard to create an environment where everyone felt safe to speak up. She encouraged transparency and open communication. She set up regular meetings where people could share progress and voice concerns without fear of punishment. At first, it wasn't easy. Old habits died hard. Some employees resisted the new ways, clinging to what they knew. There were moments of frustration and doubt, but she remained patient and firm, reminding everyone that real change takes time. She also made sure that training and development became a priority. She brought in experts to teach leadership skills, communication, and teamwork. She wanted everyone to grow, not just the managers. Slowly, the company began to change. The hallways were filled with more conversations, laughter, and collaboration. People started to trust each other more. Teams worked better together. Clients noticed the difference too, with better service and new ideas. Her leadership style was different from what the company was used to. She led with empathy but didn't shy away from making tough decisions. She believed in fairness but expected accountability. She showed that leadership was about serving the people, not controlling them. As months passed, the company's results improved. Profits began to rise. New clients signed on. Employees were happier and more motivated. The media started to take notice, praising the company's bold transformation. She didn't take all the credit. She always said it was a team effort. But she also knew that it started with that one moment. The moment she was told to wait outside and chose not to stay silent. Her story became an inspiration for many, not just in the business world but for anyone who faced unfair treatment or was told they didn't belong. She proved that leadership is about courage, vision, and the willingness to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. And most importantly, she showed that change is possible when people come together with respect and determination. The company was no longer the same place it had been just months ago. The air felt different. People smiled more. They worked with new energy. It was clear that something had shifted, something real. The changes she made had taken root. The new management team she brought in was not only skilled, but also caring. They listened to employees, took responsibility, and worked hard to solve problems. Slowly, the walls of resistance crumbled, replaced by a sense of possibility. But change was never easy. She knew that. There were still challenges. Some old habits died hard. A few people left the company, unwilling or unable to adapt. Others stayed but struggled with the new expectations. She never pretended it would be simple or quick. Real change, she believed, happens step by step, day by day. It requires patience, persistence, and belief in the people around you. She continued to walk the halls, talking to employees at all levels. She wanted to stay connected, to know what was working and what wasn't. She believed leadership wasn't about sitting behind a desk, but about being present. One afternoon, she stopped by the break room where a small group of employees were chatting. They looked up as she entered, surprised but pleased to see her. "How's it going?" she asked, smiling warmly. One of them, a young woman who had been quiet before, spoke up. "It's better. We feel like our voices matter now." Another added, "Before, it was like nobody cared what we thought. Now we see changes, and it makes a difference." Hearing this made her heart lift. It wasn't about awards or profits. It was about people feeling valued. But she also knew she couldn't get comfortable. Complacency was the enemy of progress. She kept pushing, setting new goals for the company, encouraging innovation and promoting fairness. She also focused on building diversity, not just in race or gender, but in ideas and experiences. She believed that a mix of voices would make the company stronger and more creative. One day, the board called her for a meeting. They wanted to hear about the progress and the future plans. She prepared carefully, knowing this was a chance to show that the risks they had taken were paying off. As she spoke, she shared the company's journey, the struggles, the setbacks, and the victories. She talked about the new culture they had built and the improvements in performance. The board members listened closely, some nodding in approval. When she finished, one of them said, "You've done more than we expected. This company is on a new path because of you." It was a proud moment, but she didn't let it go to her head. She thanked them but reminded everyone that the real credit belonged to the employees who had worked so hard to change. Outside the meeting room, she thought about how far the company had come and how far it still had to go. Her own journey had been part of this transformation. From the moment she was told to wait outside, to standing up in that boardroom, to leading a team through difficult decisions, each step had tested her strength and courage. She hoped her story would inspire others who faced barriers or doubts. She hoped they would see that change is possible when you refuse to accept unfair treatment, when you believe in yourself and others, when you lead with respect and purpose. The company's success was a reminder that leadership is more than power. It's responsibility. It's about creating opportunities, lifting others up, and standing firm in the face of challenges. She knew that the work was never truly done. The future would bring new obstacles and choices. But she was ready. Because now she was not just a CEO. She was a leader who had changed a company, and maybe, just maybe, changed the way people think about leadership itself. After months of intense work, the company was beginning to feel like a new place. But she knew that change isn't something that happens overnight or with just a few big decisions. It's slow, steady, and sometimes messy. There are good days and bad days, wins and losses, moments of hope and moments of doubt. And this was exactly where the company was now, a work in progress. She understood this deeply because she had lived it herself. Before becoming CEO, she had faced many challenges. Sometimes people doubted her because of her background, her gender, or the color of her skin. Many times, she was the only person who looked like her in the room. And sometimes, that made people uncomfortable. Sometimes it made people question her abilities before even giving her a chance. But she never let that stop her. She knew that to lead, she had to be strong, patient, and always ready to prove herself, not by words, but by actions. Her story wasn't just about being a Black woman in a high position. It was about leadership itself, about courage, about standing up when others expected her to stay quiet, about making decisions that others might avoid. It was about showing that respect and fairness aren't just words on paper. They have to be lived every day. As she walked through the company's halls now, she saw changes everywhere. The old posters and slogans were replaced with new ones that spoke about respect, teamwork, and innovation. The walls were painted brighter colors, creating a more welcoming space. Employees talked openly with each other, sharing ideas and helping solve problems together. It was a far cry from the quiet tension that had filled the building months before. One morning, she sat down with a group of employees from different departments. She wanted to hear from them directly, not through reports or surveys, but in honest conversations. They spoke about their experiences, the challenges they faced, and the hopes they had for the future. One young employee shared how she used to feel invisible in meetings, like her ideas didn't matter. But now she felt listened to. She felt encouraged to speak up. That simple change had made a big difference in her confidence. Another employee spoke about how the company's new training programs helped him grow his skills and see new possibilities for his career. He felt like the company cared about him, not just as a worker, but as a person. Hearing these stories reminded her why she had taken on this role. It wasn't just about profits or market share. It was about people's lives, about giving everyone a chance to succeed and feel valued. But she also knew there were still problems to solve. Not everyone had adapted easily. Some employees still held on to old ways of thinking. Some struggled with the faster pace of change. And there were moments when it felt like the past was trying to pull the company back. She addressed these challenges head-on. She held meetings where people could speak openly about their fears and frustrations. She encouraged managers to be patient and supportive, helping their teams through the transition. She made sure that everyone understood that mistakes were part of learning, but disrespect or unfair treatment would not be accepted. One day, she received a report showing that while sales were improving, some departments were still falling behind. She didn't see this as a failure, but as an opportunity to learn more. She scheduled visits to those departments to see what was happening on the ground. In one office, she met with a team that was struggling with communication. They explained that the rapid changes had left them confused and unsure about their roles. She listened carefully and promised to bring in experts to help improve teamwork and clarity. In another department, she found employees who felt overwhelmed by new technologies they were expected to use. She quickly arranged training sessions and assigned mentors to help people adapt. These visits were tiring, but she believed they were necessary. Leadership wasn't about sitting in a corner office. It was about being present and understanding what people really needed. As the months went by, she also focused on building stronger relationships with clients and partners. She knew that a company's success depends not only on internal changes, but also on how it is seen by the outside world. She organized meetings with important clients to listen to their feedback. Some were happy with the improvements. Others had concerns, especially about how quickly the company could deliver new products and services. She promised to be honest about what was possible and to work hard to meet their expectations. Her honesty earned respect. Clients saw that she wasn't making empty promises. She was committed to building trust, even if it took time. Behind the scenes, she also worked on her own growth. She sought advice from mentors and peers, people who had walked similar paths. She read books, attended workshops, and stayed open to learning. She believed that a good leader never stops growing. One challenge she faced was balancing her work with her personal life. Leading a large company was demanding. There were long hours, constant pressure, and difficult decisions. At times it felt overwhelming. But she found strength in her family and friends, who supported her and reminded her to take care of herself. She also made sure to take small breaks, short walks, quiet moments to reflect, or even a few pages of a book unrelated to work. These moments helped her stay grounded and focused. As the company's story spread, more people began to see her as a role model, not because she was perfect, but because she was real, because she faced challenges and didn't give up, because she believed in fairness and respect. She started receiving invitations to speak at conferences, schools, and community events. She shared her experiences openly, hoping to inspire others who might feel stuck or underestimated. She spoke about the importance of listening, learning, and leading with empathy. About the courage it takes to stand up for what is right. About the power of diversity, not just in numbers, but in ideas and perspectives. Her message was simple but powerful. Everyone deserves respect, and everyone has the ability to lead. At the same time, she remained focused on the company. She set new goals for growth, innovation, and social responsibility. She wanted the company to be not just successful, but also a positive force in the community. She launched programs to support local education, environmental sustainability, and fair hiring practices. She believed that a business should give back and help build a better world. Her leadership style was becoming a model for others. She combined strength with kindness, firmness with understanding, vision with action. One day, an employee approached her with a question that surprised her. "How do you keep going when things get tough?" the employee asked. She smiled thoughtfully. "I remind myself why I started," she said. "I think about the people who believed in me and the people I want to help. I remember that change is never easy, but it's always worth it." She paused. "And I never forget that leadership is about serving others, not just leading them." Her words stayed with the employee long after. Looking back, she knew the journey was far from over. There would always be new challenges, new battles to fight, but she also knew the company was stronger now. It had a future filled with hope and opportunity. She was proud, not just of the company's success, but of the culture they had built. A culture where respect, fairness, and courage were not just ideas, but daily realities. And most of all, she was grateful. Grateful for the chance to lead. Grateful for the people who trusted her. Grateful for the opportunity to prove that change is possible when you believe in yourself and others. Her story was a reminder that no matter where you come from, no matter what obstacles you face, you have the power to lead and to make a difference. And that, in the end, is what leadership truly means.